in the 1700s, the Europeans thought swans were really pure animals because they're pure white. Animals are symbol for purity. Then I think then they went to Australia, perhaps colonization, whatever, and then they saw black swans, and it just totally shook everything up for them. I've actually lived in Australia, and those black swans are actually equally very beautiful. But again, it was just such a shocking thing. How could this creature of God be black, which is often a negative connotation? It could be evil, right? I've read variations where they killed these black swans. They tried to eradicate these black swans, but just so they could sort of fulfill the vision or the certainty they had of how things should be. It's really this description of events, totally unexpected events that happen and that totally cause massive impact, and nobody prepares for. Not always, but oftentimes just changes everything entirely. And nothing, no system, no framework, no mental preparation can really prepare you for it. And events like, for example, for me personally, I'd say COVID, for example, 9/11, just events that are totally unexpected, yet impacts massively. But also on a personal level, I think we experience black swan events too, just things in our life that happen that totally shake things up, that no amount of preparation can prepare us for it. It's very much a part of life as well. They happen. I think Taleb was the person who wrote that. He believed that history doesn't actually evolve, but it explodes through these events that change things entirely.
I remember reading Morgan Housel's work, part of his work, where he wrote about the it's a similar, it's probably along inspired by the same thing we're talking about here, but the biggest shifting events in personal lives and in sort of collective lives, us as a human race, there's no conceivable way you could have predicted them. It's like there are things that we know are going to happen, and there are things that we know could happen, and there are things that we don't know they even could happen. And it's those things that are in that third category that's not expect the unexpected. It is just unexpectable, let's say, are the things that shift you massively. And it's so interesting, isn't it? Because we can't physically live our lives with that in mind. We have to be where we are now and go, right, well, I'm going to go to this university and do this degree, and I'm going to try hard to then get this qualification to go and do this thing, or, whatever. I really want to pursue this friendship or this relationship because I think this person's really great or whatever. But then so out of nowhere, there's a black swan and everything changes. And I think COVID's such a brilliant example of it because it's been so instrumental, I guess, in all three of our lives that just we had an idea of what was going on. Suddenly, that's not going on anymore. And you're shifted fundamentally. And it was out of your control and it just happened. So one side of that is like scary and it goes, okay, how are we supposed to live if in a few years' time something might happen that completely changes my world and how I think about it? But there's also a positive way where you go, who you don't know when the next big shift is happening. And you don't even know, you don't have a whiff of a sense of what it might be like. And again, for that to be positive, you have to dance with uncertainty in your life and have a loose grip on reality. But that's quite an exciting way to be, isn't it? Like you don't want things to be under your control constantly. You do, it's like what we talked. I mean, there's been recurring themes in this whole conversation, but it is that you want the chaos. You do. There's a part of you that does.
It's all about this human belief in certainty when in all counts it seems that there's actually no certainty at all. For example, in the Nietzschean sense, we think that there's an order to life, there's a truth, and it used to be really centered around religion, and then suddenly we realize that actually no, it collapsed. That religion might not necessarily be true, especially certain faiths, and suddenly we're left with, oh God, there's actually so much uncertainty. And a lot of people collapse because of that, and especially those who are so tied into certain certainty and certain thought, they collapse under the weight of just that realization. Same thing when you really look at it, as Jacob mentioned earlier, in terms of the Munchausen trilemma. We operate with such certainty, but when you really examine many of our beliefs, there is really no certainty. And the sort of ascribing to certainty is what leads to not only confusion, delusion, but also a lot of divisiveness between people. And the same thing in the Black Swan event. We try to build really certain frameworks of how the world works, of how life works, certain systems. Yet you're faced with just the unpredictability of it all. And actually, Taleb's very interesting. He wrote another book called Anti-Fragility, where he said that the solution really towards how to really overcome black swan events or be prepared for it one aspect of it is adaptability, to actually have optionality, which you could also say from this other perspective is being able to ascribe to uncertainty, being prepared for uncertainty. It's really this idea of humility, if anything, compared to certainty and conviction and perhaps arrogance or ignorance.
Yeah, it's like Bruce Lee's you want to be formless like water. You want to be an eternal student and willing to kind of start again. And I think about this in the kind of a neurochemical context with dopamine being this wanting for uncertainty of wanting of a kind of anticipation of the rewards. And it's all built inside of us, this want for uncertainty. And I guess I'm using this in a gambling context of I recently found out that like Las Vegas has something like 25, I think it's 25 million visitors a year, or it might be 35. Um, but for context, like Mecca has like 2.5 million. Um, a lot of these like that's crazy amount of people. I think Disneyland has something like I know it's like 10-ish. And so why all these people wanting to go and gamble their lives away and lose their money? Well, because there's something in us that desires that. We want that uncertainty from our normal lives. I mean, if someone's telling us that we can certainly maybe win some money, then like that's more exciting than going down the shops and just having my usual day. So let's go do that. Let's go crazy. Let's go Vegas. But yeah, I guess the when you're talking about COVID, it's such a weird thought pattern of like, where would we all be without COVID? Like, who would we be? Because it we didn't realize it at the time, but we kind of dropped into solitude and then found ourselves through that. And now we're on the result because of it. It's like it we have to be thankful for it, I guess.
Yeah,
Mm.
for sure. It's a call to gratitude. And that the point on dopamine and anticipation is so interesting, isn't it? It's a biological, a factor of our biology that emerged because it helped our ancestors survive, right? The fact that what drove us was not reward, but it was the chance of reward. And we don't want a certain reward because that doesn't give us the joy. We're wired so that what we want is a randomness to the joys in life. And that came from like, our ancestors, thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even hundred thousands of years ago, that sort of nervous system makeup. The fact that that mechanism now informs like so much of our lives now, how addicted we are to our smartphones, our relationship with things like food and pornography and gambling and all this kind of like it's it's baked into our lives like tens of thousands of years later. And yeah, that I've heard that Las Vegas stat before, and I think it was along the lines of the author saying like it's the biggest human pilgrimage is to Vegas, which says something interesting about our lives, doesn't it?